Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone. Good evening and welcome to Left My Heart at the Masjid, IAR's nightly live broadcast during the time of the coronavirus pandemic. My name is Kashif Osman, and I am delighted to have been your host for the past 5 weeks almost. Alhamdulillah, we've had a very exciting show, and we're about to start the blessed month of Ramadan, inshallah. So tonight is our penultimate episode, the second to last episode of this Left My Heart at the Masjid series. And inshallah, tomorrow, we're going to have Imam AbuTaleb and myself right back where we started, discussing some of the Ramadan programming opportunities that IER has. And we'll be recapping some of our most exciting sessions over the past few weeks. No doubt one of the sessions we'll be recapping tomorrow will be tonight's very own session. Tonight, we're discussing diets, and we're discussing specifically the best ways to maintain a nutritious diet, a nutritious, healthy diet during the blessed month of Ramadan, which is just around the corner. Likely you've seen our posts all around social media and on YouTube as well, all about Ramadan. So this is a great way to start off Ramadan the right way. We always think of Ramadan as siyam, as fasting. And the key component of that is the food we eat when we're not fasting, for suhoor or for iftar, for late night snack, for the second late night snack, in my case, for the third late night snack. So tonight we are welcomed by Sister Suha Najar. She is a registered dietitian. She's a Master of Science and an outpatient dietitian with a strong interest in nutrition education, community outreach, and outpatient care. Currently, Sister Suha works for NC State as a registered dietitian in the student health department and facilitates the Eat Smart, Move More, Prevent Diabetes program, where she is an advocate that helps clients obtain the nutritional goals and with respect and compassion. Oftentimes we'll tell people that they might not get enough iron or enough protein in their diets, and you have to be mindful of some people might have different dietary restrictions. So Sister Soha attacks that with the right compassion and care that allows everyone to maintain their own beliefs, but also live to a more nutritious standard, inshallah. Nationally, she has volunteered for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and was a chair for the Muslims of Dietetics and Nutrition Interest Group. She earned her bachelor's from Eastern Michigan University, and very exciting for myself, earned her master's in nutritional science from my alma mater, NC Central in Durham. We're going to be discussing ways that we can apply these Sunnah diets, which focuses on nutrition in light of the Quran and Sunnah. And Sister Soha has also been on the Hope Sisters Halakha to discuss mental health and how diet plays an effect on that, how maybe we're more anxious or more likely to eat more food, or physiologically, the impact of various foods on our mental states. So I'm delighted to welcome Sister Soha to the show. How are you tonight?
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. I'm doing well, a little nervous, but excited to be here.
Alhamdulillah, you're doing a great job, inshallah. So nutrition and diets. It's a very timely topic, and I appreciate you joining us to discuss this. What are some quick things that we should know about diets and nutrition during Ramadan?
Well, first things first, a lot of times people think that Ramadan is a great way to kickstart a weight loss plan. And I feel that it can be beneficial to some, but ultimately the best kind of diet is going to be one that's sustainable. So it'd be nice to start somewhere where you can actually continue with the same habits. So if this is going to be an opportunity for you to establish some habits for whatever weight goals that you have, know that once Ramadan is over, perhaps those habits won't stick as more adherently as you would like. So ultimately what we want you to do is see maybe a dietitian and work out a plan for long-term use.
That's an excellent point. We always think we're going to go into Ramadan and maybe be the start of a weight loss regimen, but I always end up gaining weight during Ramadan for some reason. It's all of mama's fried food, alhamdulillah. But beyond that, what suggestions would you have for us that we can, especially during this time right now where we're not going to be out of the house, we're primarily going to be at home and have access to our pantries, to our full fridges, what can we do to maintain a healthy diet during this time?
Well, I think do you think it's a good time for me to start the presentation?
I think it's an excellent time for you to start the presentation, of course.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and screen share because I think it's always wise to start from the very beginning. And what I'd like to talk about is just basic nutrition 101 initially, and then we'll kind of snowball into more of those questions that maybe other people would be interested in hearing the answers to. So when we're looking at nutrition 101, and I'm not sure about you, but when I grew up, I had the food pyramid. Nowadays, we're looking at the USDA MyPlate. And MyPlate is essentially, and I like this graphic so much from the Hope Sisters Hanukkah, so I decided to recycle it and use it here as well. So ultimately, what you're going to do is you're going to have a 9-inch plate, and a lot of us are very generous and hospitable that we eat food and we put the food all the way up to the border of the plate. So first things first, we want to keep the food inside the border, okay? The second thing we want to do is we want to kind of just eyeball and portion control. So you see here we have grains in the upper right quadrant. Then we have our proteins, our veggies, and honestly, I think veggies should be the whole plate and then fruits should be reserved for snacks. So I think that's a better way of utilizing the plate. But one reason I really like this graphic is because it gives you ideas of what exactly a grain is. And here you'll see that grains are, whole wheat bread, cereals, pastas, barley, other kinds of sources, and also some dairy products like milk, yogurt, and ice cream. And then you have proteins, and proteins, you'll see that we have our fishes, our beef, our chicken, our eggs, but they go way beyond animal products. And we're looking at things like tofu and cheese, beans, nuts, nut butters. So there's a nice variety of different things, as you mentioned earlier, for people who are specific and have preferences with their diet. And then on this side, we have really yummy, rich vegetables, and you'll see the beautiful array of colors. And this is what really we want to have half our plate. And then of course we have our fruits, which are more sweet and of course dessert-like. And it's really nice to kind of reserve those for your snack times. So what's really important with carbohydrates or grains in this case is that they supply quick energy. So you're talking about as soon as you put it in the mouth and you start chewing, you release that amylase, all of those enzymes that break down the carbohydrate rather quickly, and it gives you that energy for about 3 to 4 hours. Whereas protein, for example, it gives you more prolonged energy. So you're eating this and it's going to give you about 6 to 8 hours of energy for it to be fully digested. So ultimately what the goal is to eat carbohydrates that are complex, which are going to take a little bit more time to digest, and pair those with some of your proteins to have some nice satiety. And you're going to see that's going to be the common theme throughout our session today. And of course, adding those really nutrient-rich vegetables and fruits to add in some micronutrients, fiber, and some water content as well. So now we know what to eat. We also need to know what to drink. So here I put a nice big glass of water. And one of the biggest risks is the dehydration risk during Ramadan. So obviously we're not drinking, we're not eating. This year, alhamdulillah, it's a little bit cooler than in years past. So we have about 14 hours of fasting this year, whereas in the past we would fast sometimes up to 17 hours. And the silver lining of us staying at home is that we don't necessarily need to be out and about. At least some of us don't need to be out and about. And those who do, I would definitely say would be at higher risk. But for the meantime, what we want to do is make sure that during the times that we aren't fasting, to go ahead and drink that water. So the necessity of drinking water throughout non-fasting hours, you're talking about maybe having a water bottle with you throughout the night when you're making tarawih, taking a couple sips, breaking your fast, of course, with the dates and water, drinking water for suhoor. So there's opportunities to drink water, but there's also other sources of water. And if you're not big on drinking just water, you can also drink some milk. You can have 100% juice. There's water in soups, and of course your fruits and veggies. Now, there are some tips that I want to kind of touch on to avoid caffeinated beverages, particularly during suhoor. Excuse me, I'm actually thirsty, so grab some water right now. So we want to avoid caffeinated beverages because they're diuretic. And so what they end up doing is making you go to the restroom more quickly. So of course you're pulling that water when you're going to the restroom, but you're also pulling a lot of electrolytes with that. So if you're looking at baseline, let's say you're at a baseline with water. When you're drinking caffeinated beverages, so here's the caffeinated beverages. Well, we're already at a deficit for water. So for every serving of a caffeinated beverage like coffee or soda, we're going to need one just to get back to where we were at the baseline. And then we need another one in order to become more hydrated. So you're looking at a 2:1 ratio for caffeinated beverages. So this is something we don't necessarily want to do. Not only are you going to get that caffeinated crash later on in the day, I would go ahead and reserve those for iftar times. If you were up and planning to pray tarawih anyway, that might be a good time to have your coffee. Also, when you're looking at water, we're aiming for about a half of your body weight in ounces. So what that means is that, I'm sure many of you have been familiar with the old adage of 64 ounces or eight fluid ounces of cups. So what we're looking at now is perhaps maybe a woman who's not quite 5 feet, 100 pounds, she would only need, if you're looking at half your body weight in ounces, she would only need 50 ounces of water, whereas a man who's about 6 feet tall, 250 pounds would need 125 ounces. So you can kind of do the math with that, just calculate, and then of course divide that bigger number by 8, and that'll be how many cups of water you should drink daily. So I wanted to share this, this ayah, and it says, "O children of Adam, take your adornment at every masjid and eat and drink, but be not excessive. Indeed, he likes not those who commit excess." So Allah Ta'ala is telling us to essentially not be excessive in what we're doing. So I want to kind of remind everyone that Ramadan, the intention of it is for fasting, not feasting. We're looking at eating in moderation. Even if it's Ramadan, even if we have that, well, I've been denied all day, this is a treat for me, we have to kind of revert back. What is the intention of Ramadan? So ultimately, it's to be fasting, to be compassionate towards those who are a little less fortunate, to strive to do good. So it's not just a matter of staying in the kitchen and eating these really elaborate meals and spending hours on it. It's really a time to reflect and rush to make and do those good deeds. And I wanted to remind everyone of the hadith when the Rasul said, "No man fills a vessel worse than his stomach. A few morsels that keep his back straight are sufficient for the son of Adam. If he has to increase, he should keep a third of his stomach for food, a third for drink, and a third for breathing." And so this is something, like you said earlier, Kashif, that we can apply all year round. It's not just regulated to Ramadan, but it also is very important in Ramadan to kind of continue with these ways of eating, because ultimately nobody really wants to pray with a big stomach ache. So we want to make sure that we're eating in light of the Quran and the Sunnah. So let's go ahead and just start with suhoor. So when we're eating suhoor, the Rasul said, "Take the suhoor, for surely there is blessing in it." Now, I know many of us are like, well, suhoor is really not worth it. I'd rather get that extra couple of minutes of sleep. Well, there's blessing in it. The Rasul told us that there's barakah in it. So why not? If you're not a big, breakfast eater, and I did put some pictures, a picture of all this food, doesn't mean you have to eat any and all of it. It could be as simple as some water if you're not the type of person who likes to eat that early. But given that this is 30 days, chances are you're going to start gaining an appetite around suhoor time. So one of the benefits, besides, of course, religiously, is that this is an opportunity to maintain your muscle mass and provide energy for you. There are some people, I'm sure, who are still, doing the grind of waking up, going to work, or, even perhaps virtually going to work. You still need that energy to be able to attend those meetings and, give your feedback. And so it's really important to go ahead and maintain that constant level of energy. Remember to go back to the MyPlate method, and we're eating complex carbohydrates, lean proteins, and we're going to drink some water with that. Okay, so these are just some food ideas. I literally picked them off the internet and they look delicious to me. And you could see that you can kind of check off what we were talking about. So this is the lean proteins we talked about. Here's the complex carbs and here's some veggie. And this was called a chicken shawarma bowl, which sounds delicious. I'm probably going to try it during Ramadan iftar probably. And then of course we have our basics. We have some veggies and eggs, and here's the fruit for some carbs. Here are some energy bites. I actually do have this on my YouTube channel, some semblance of it with some protein powder to add that extra protein kick for suhoor. And of course our favorite, hummus. Eating that with some veggies rather than the bread can help because the hummus itself does have some carbohydrates, so we don't necessarily need extra. The carrots can be sufficient for that, and of course our dal. This link right here is, this was written by a woman named Christine Byrne, but it's actually based off another Muslim sister who's a registered dietitian, and her name is Noor Sibda. If you wanted to, you can go ahead and link on that, and I think there's like 27 ideas, so you can definitely try something new. Now in regards to iftar, I just wanted to remind everyone that the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to break his fast with 3 fresh dates. And if there were no fresh dates, he would do dry dates. And if there were no dry dates, then he would take sips of water. And so we want to kind of continue with that tradition. But Sheikh Abdullah ibn Jibrin added to that, if there is no water available, then whatever is available. And if there is nothing available, to make the intention to break the fast. And I want to share this hadith because I think that this helps us humble ourselves a little bit in regards to, you know, I know that my husband, for example, when he would come home sometimes on his way home and he would just miss breaking the fast, he would probably break it on like a piece of gum or something. But I'm thinking more like if there's nothing available, to make the intention that there are people out there who have nothing. There's people out there who have nothing to break their fast on. And we need to be really grateful that Allah Ta'ala has given us so much bounty. And just to kind of remind everybody to know where we are and not to be in excess, because there are some people out there who are really struggling. But in addition to that, so that's kind of like the more compassionate side, and of course the religious side. But what happens with the physiological side? And so we have ghrelin and leptin, which are 2 hormones in the body. And this is, I really like this graphic because it's kind of simple, but it does it all. So you'll see here, it says empty stomach causes ghrelin levels to rise. So our stomach is actually, it is a vessel, and it actually shrinks with time if there's no food for an extended period. So it kind of gets smaller. And that when the stomach gets smaller, it kind of is an indication. And then ultimately the ghrelin tells the brain, it says, okay, well, I need to eat something. And one of the ways you know that is by ghrelin growling. And growling, you know, you have a growling stomach. So your stomach is talking to you and it's saying, feed me. So ultimately what happens when you break your suhoor, you're feeding your belly, right? You're essentially getting those dates in, getting that glucose and fructose in, telling your body, okay, you know, energy is coming. And so we're drinking some water, and what happens to the stomach? It slowly expands, right? So when it expands, then leptin kicks in, and leptin is the hormone that tells us that we're getting full. So what's nice about taking your suhoor, for example, or your iftar, and just breaking your fast, when you take a minute and just kind of slow it down a little bit, and usually I'm not sure if you've heard, you know, it takes 20 minutes to feel full. It does, because once you kind of chew your food, it goes in your belly kind of gets that signal to tell leptin to kick in. It takes about 20 minutes. So what happens with a lot of us when, you know, food is ready on the table? Well, we'll break our fast, we'll drink our water, we'll eat that samosa, we'll have a little bit of soup, we'll start eating our meal, and by the time it's time to pray Maghrib, now we're feeling a little heavy and bloated, and we're not as agile. So what is the way for us to kind of counteract that? Well, there's one way we could do that by going ahead and breaking our fast, and of course, following the traditional route of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So he used to break his fast and drink some water and then go ahead and make salah. And so not only does it allow a little bit more focus because you're not stuffed and uncomfortable, but it also gives, physiologically an opportunity for ghrelin and leptin to catch up with each other. So when you are ready to eat, you're not sitting and, gorging yourself. Because remember, Allah Ta'ala tells us he doesn't like things in excess. So if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Okay. So I literally made a menu for you guys. How do we do this? Well, we started off by, here's our starter. We have 3 dates and water. And then we have our little mu'min over here to encourage us to go pray right after, okay? And then after that, we have, and of course, this is up to you guys, whatever you want to do with it. You can have some soup. Dal soup, for example, is a lentil soup in the Asian community. A tabbouleh salad, you can have that. You can have both. What happens when you do that? Well, you could see how leptin is starting to kind of catch up a little bit. So by the time it's the main course, and I literally just wrote down whatever, but I did want you to kind of visualize on our MyPlate, where does this go? Well, here's one option. We have baked chicken, roasted sweet potatoes, and sauteed zucchini. So if we're looking at the MyPlate, just visualizing it, well, the grains go here, so that's sweet potato. The protein goes here, and then the vegetables would go here, okay? So I'm Middle Eastern, so we have makluba, but I did represent our biryani people. So
this raises a good point. Which one's better? Let us know in the YouTube chat, biryani or makluba.
So my makluba, I'm not frying it. I'm going to actually broil it. I'm going to broil cauliflower, carrots, and eggplant instead of potatoes. And that way I'm getting in remember, we're getting in our grains from the makluba rice, we're getting the meat, and then we're getting the cauliflower, carrots, and eggplant. With biryani, I've tried to add some stuff in it. Please forgive me if it doesn't taste right, if you guys add this, but I thought it'll be a good way to kind of add some veggies. So in your biryani, add some green beans, add some peppers, add some onions, fill it up with some veg, and then maybe, you can kind of get closer to that balance. If it doesn't work, please forgive me in advance. If it does work, good on you. And then, of course, we have our comfort food lovers with the macaroni and cheese. And this is, we're adding broccoli florets and some shredded carrots. And the shredded carrots, you won't even be able to taste it. But again, we're kind of sneaking in those veggies into our favorites, an opportunity for us to have some food that's plentiful. And of course, those micronutrients for just overall good quality of life, overall, good digestion, and of course, making sure that we're not overeating on the other stuff. So I put this picture up here because this is for my fellow millennial cohorts. We got some avocado toast representing, and here's a bite. So bake every bite count. So this is kind of the catch-all for everything else. Ultimately, we want to save space for nutritionally dense foods over the fried foods and the sweets. And I understand, you've been eyeing those sweets all day, but let's go ahead and eat our food first and see if those sweets are still as tempting, or maybe a little bit would go a longer way. And then for bad breath, and I know that Allah Ta'ala loves the breath of the fasting person, and it's better than the smell of musk. But for us mere mortals, if there's something that bothers you, you can always look into, after you break your fast, to use those crunchy fruits and veggies to maintain that good gut microbiota. And then you can also chew on herbs like parsley, mint, sage to help with that. It ultimately washes away some of the bacteria in the mouth, and also ultimately helps with the bacteria in the gut as well. Also, get sufficient rest to help with less energy intake. Now, the body does an amazing thing with compensating. So If you're not getting enough energy, you're going to feel more tired. Your metabolism is going to slow down. All good things. Your body's always looking to maintain a balance. So if you're not getting enough energy, then it follows that you're not going to have as much. Listen to your body. Alhamdulillah, a lot of us are staying home. For the most part, go ahead and take advantage of that time. Read, engage with your children, and then if you need to take a nap, go ahead and take a nap. Also, take a micronutrient supplement. Now, this is something that I don't necessarily recommend unless people are deficient in certain micronutrients, but because we're going for such a long stretch, and a lot of us are not eating a huge variety of foods, I think having a supplement is actually necessary during Ramadan. So just like a regular basic multivitamin, make sure that if it's a gummy that it has pectin in it rather than gelatin. Also engage in light exercise throughout the month to preserve muscle mass and a healthy metabolic rate. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're not losing that muscle mass. If you're going to do a lot of hardcore exercises, you can lose that muscle mass. So be mindful of that. If you were to, of course, you have to do it at specific times, and make sure that you're replenishing adequately. So ultimately, I appreciate and thank you for listening. And I wanted to share, Allahumma ballaghna Ramadan. May Allah Ta'ala allow us to reach the month of Ramadan. I know it's only 2 days away, but we still have to be mindful and grateful that, Allah Ta'ala is going to allow us to have that. And Jazakumullah khair for listening.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Suha. It's been wonderfully enlightening to learn all about this and how to best structure my plate. Apparently, I've been eating too much protein and too many meats and too many carbs and not enough vegetables.
Alhamdulillah. The young men crowd.
Do we have any questions from our audience for Sister Suha before I ask a few of my own questions? No, it doesn't look like we have anything. So I know we touched briefly on this in the presentation. When it comes to the best times to eat during Ramadan, is it best to have, to snack continually through the nights, or to anchor ourselves with a meal at Maghrib time, at iftar time, and then an sahur meal, or should we continually keep eating throughout the night, smaller meals?
So that's really going to depend on everyone's activity level, and everybody's going to be a little different. So you can't really say one size fits all. It's more customary. For example, if there's an individual who stays up for hours making tarawih, then yes, they would probably need more sustenance versus someone who goes to sleep right after Isha. They might just be fine with, suhoor. So it really depends on what you're doing. If you are, I know some young men typically like to work out and can continue with that building of muscle. And so they'll do a workout maybe 2-3 hours after they eat initially. So I would definitely say, okay, and now we have to do some supplemental protein with that to help build that muscle. So it really depends on what the activity is and how much you're doing. During the day, usually when you're looking outside of Ramadan, you're looking at eating within every 3 to 4 hours. So if you're going to be up throughout the night, some people like to switch their days and nights. I'm not sure how that works, but if you're going to be doing that, then that's how you change your diet every 3 to 4 hours, making sure you have a complex carb and a protein.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair. Kind of building on that question, as opposed to having one heavy iftar meal, what are your thoughts on maybe having a lighter meal at iftar? Just, you're having that dates and some water or some milk, whatever. And then later on having that heavier meal of magluba or biryani. Is that better? Like maybe having that later meal, that heavier meal after Tarawih Salah. Would that be better for your health, or better just eat all your food at one time at iftar time? The same amount of food. Yeah.
Again, this is not a one size fits all. It really is custom. So ultimately, if you're going to be doing a lot more of activity, you really should eat. I don't want you to eat to the point where you're really uncomfortable. So typically, and this is what we discussed also in the Hope Sisters talk, is to kind of stay within a 3 to 7 range on the hunger scale. So this is for a typical day, but if you're looking at the hunger scale being 1 where you're really, really starving, and then 10 where you're super duper stuffed, you had the best of thought ever, you kind of want to stay in the 3 to 7 range. So you're hungry, you could feed your hunger, but you're not starving, and then you eat until satisfaction, but you're not overindulging. So if you can stay in that vicinity, I would say go ahead and have the dates, have a starter, have a salad, or have a soup. But I don't know if the dates are enough sustainability. It's just going to give you that glucose. It's going to give you that rush of energy, but it definitely won't sustain you for long.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair for that. I'm just checking if we have any other questions going on here. Doesn't look like it. Any other suggestions or thoughts on Ramadan, or maybe continuing our Ramadan healthy eating plans for beyond Ramadan?
Yeah, I'm always an advocate of trying new vegetables. I think that they're incredibly underrated. Adding a little bit of olive oil, salt, pepper, garlic powder, just a little bit goes a long way. They're so good for us, and we really underestimate their value and what they can do. A lot of them have antioxidant properties, anti-inflammatory properties, help us feel regular. And so, a lot of people say, well, I eat a lot of rice and a lot of meat, but, we need to kind of add those veggies into the mix.
Excellent point. Definitely just adding some olive oil and some spices can definitely jazz up a lot of vegetables. So now we come to a little fun section. What are your thoughts on Banya? I've heard a lot of conspiracy theories, a lot of yes and no, very polarizing answers. What are your thoughts on Banya, both personally and from a health perspective?
Banya meaning okra stew?
Exactly.
Okay, now does it have meat with it, or are you eating it without the meat?
We'll say it has meat with it.
Okay. I hated it when I was younger, but I absolutely love it now. It's delicious. I think that, okra is amazing in that it has cruciferous vegetable properties where it can do some detoxifying of the liver as well. So that's always a benefit, as well as other vegetables like cabbage and cauliflower, broccoli, things like that. So that's going to be a win-win. Not only does it taste really good, it also helps the body. So I do like it. When you're eating it, what I like to do with stews and meats like that to kind of stay within that MyPlate, because it can be really easy to kind of make it a little less balanced. So go ahead and put the stew and then maybe a scoop of rice on top, and that way you won't be eating as much rice. Now, do you like bamia?
I've never had Banya yet, but all my friends keep talking about Banya being great or Banya being the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I think when you're younger, you don't like it, and then all of a sudden you turn a leaf, and then it's one of your favorites.
Definitely interesting. Okra is polarizing in both the Desi cuisine and Southern cuisine. We love fried okra, as well as in the Middle East. So we have a couple other questions now, subhanAllah.
Okay.
Someone says, my teenagers are very picky eaters and don't like eating big meals. What would you recommend to keep their energy levels up?
Picky eaters, meaning that they're eating the same things over and over. If there's an individual who, sometimes with children, we do have that. I'm not sure how old your questioner's children are.
Teenagers.
Teenagers. Okay. So we definitely want them to have a multivitamin. If they are picky, that means more than likely they're not getting some of those micronutrients that they should be getting. A good way of doing it is just by exposure and just making sure that every time you have that dish that they just leave it in their plate. Studies have shown that 1 out of 10 times of exposure, a child will try a new food. So just having something, if for example, they don't like peas, just continuing just putting peas in different kind of meals and not putting a lot on their plate, but just a little bit every single time in an effort to just get them exposed. One day they might try it and they might actually like it. In the meantime, try to be creative and sneak in those veggies some other ways. Shred in some carrots, chop in and, mix in some spinach, they will hardly taste it. So at least you're getting some stuff in there without them really knowing it, unless they're the types who like inspect foods. Hopefully that's not the case. If it's something more serious, perhaps textural issues or sensory issues, then that's maybe when we need to look for more help and support with our healthcare workers like a registered dietitian.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair. I hope that answers your question. Next question, kind of tying into this of sneaking foods in there. Quinoa is said to be one of those great replacements for rice and other heavy carbs, along with cauliflower. Is it better than rice per se? Does it achieve the goals, or is it a lot of just a hype behind the quinoa movements?
Well, quinoa is definitely nutritional. It can be nutritionally superior depending on what kind of rice. So brown rice is going to be more nutritionally superior than white rice, for example. But quinoa is a different kind of grain, and it has a lot more protein in it. And so that's kind of where it's come from, and the trendiness of it came from more of a vegetarian or vegan diet, sneaking in those extra proteins without it necessarily being an animal product. So it's just a way to add some new stuff in there. I personally like it. I like to use it as rice. Most of my family does. One of my sons hates it. So it really is a hit or a miss. In that instance, the rice is fine if that's something that, is going to cause, family friction. But in the meantime, yes, quinoa is definitely a little bit more superior in regards to the protein content and some of the fiber.
So Jazakallah khair. I hope that answers your question, Auntie Shaida. We have two more questions and then we'll wrap up, inshallah. Our first one, kind of in the same vein. Our first question says, my brother has kidney stones and my uncle is a diabetic. They insist on fasting in spite of their health issues. What advice can I provide to them from a nutrition perspective?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. It's hard for me to say without knowing their full background or discussing it with their provider. Some diabetics can, unless they're completely insulin dependent, they can have an opportunity to fast. Kidney stones as well. I'm not sure how severe or serious it is at the stage if they have to continuously replenish with fluids and drink a lot of water. But that's, I would say, first stop would be to your provider, maybe in these times where you can't physically see a provider, to go ahead and make a telehealth appointment and ask for their recommendation first, because I don't know the extent of their particular issues. Sometimes with diabetics, we see a flipping of the days and nights. So they'll use the nighttime as an opportunity to eat and make sure that their glycemic levels stay balanced, and then they'll use the day to sleep. But that's something that they have to talk to their doctor with first.
Jazakallah khair. I hope that answers your question, Hannah. Now our final question, kind of going into this whole coronavirus issue, what are some foods we can eat to increase our immunity? Foods that might improve maybe gut health or other health?
Well, we all know that honey is definitely, it's a prophetic medicine. Allah Ta'ala allows us honey, and we see that the science is actually catching up with the Sunnah. And you'll see that it helps with everything, including antibacterial issues. So that's a good thing to start with. I believe a tablespoon a day or a teaspoon a day is sufficient to go ahead and have that. I would definitely increase my vitamin C intake just to make sure that my immune system is tip-top shape, especially before going into Ramadan. So maybe having, something as simple as an orange daily. Lemons also are really high in vitamin C. So black seed, of course, is, the cure for everything but death. So these are some really nice ways to kind of incorporate the prophetic medicines to ensure. And there was a hadith that stated that 7 dates a day, it wards off everything, or wards off witchcraft and poison. And may Allah Ta'ala forgive me if that's not correct. But so we can definitely try that as well, to have those 7 dates daily. I would definitely break up the 7 though, because that can be quite a lot of glucose at one time, depending on what kind of date you're having. So you can definitely try those options.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair. And I appreciate including the black seed on there as well as the dates, because those are ones we talk about and hear about a lot during this time. Now, if our audience has any future questions, where could they reach out to you at? Do you have a YouTube channel? This is your time to plug whatever you want to plug.
Well, we started a YouTube channel called The Sunnah Diet. It's very, very new. We want to kind of get into things like dates and prophetic medicines. Alhamdulillah, we have some time to focus on that, so inshallah we'll do that. But you can, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and email them at thesunnahdiet@gmail.com. And inshallah, we'll look into that. If that's something maybe 2 weeks down the line, you think of a question, go ahead and just answer, or go ahead and shoot me an email there. I do want to say that if it's a particular case, unless I have your full medical history, I'm not sure how much I can customize it to you. If it's generic information, go for it. But I would definitely recommend that if you did have a more complicated case, to go ahead and schedule an appointment with a registered dietitian. A lot of them do telehealth nowadays.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair, Sister Sawa, for joining us tonight. I appreciate all these suggestions, especially as we roll into the blessed month of Ramadan. Just a reminder for our audience, we've published a letter from Imam AbuTaleb on the Raleigh Masjid website, as well as 2 videos on YouTube. So the blessed month of Ramadan will start tomorrow, the 23rd at Maghrib time. So around 8 o'clock, I believe, inshallah. We'll have Tarawih tomorrow night, right after tomorrow's live stream, inshallah. And then Friday will be the first day of fasting, the first time to implement a lot of these nutritional techniques suggested by Sister Suha. Jazakallah khair once again, Sister Suha, for joining us. And
thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And Jazakallah khair to our audience. Inshallah, I'll see everyone tomorrow, 8:30, for the final episode of Left My Heart at the Masjid. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone.